There are deep inequalities that need to be addressed and systems that need to be changed. And I think that we're working with an administration that is committed to really exploring how that could happen. How do we impact federal policy to make those changes?
Aloha, my name is Noelle Kahanu, and I am an Associate Specialist of Public Humanities and Native Hawaiian Programs at the American Studies Department of the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And we're here today as part of the Better Tomorrow Speaker Series at the Digital Studio of the College of Social Sciences here at UH Manoa. And I have the pleasure and honor to be here with Michelle Kauhane. There's some exciting topics that are happening in her world and in our world, so we're here to talk about that. So I want to introduce Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So you are the Senior Vice President of Community Grants and Initiatives at the Hawaii Community Foundation.
Yes.
But you were recently appointed by President Biden to the Advisory Commission on Asian American Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders.
Yes.
So what an honor. Can you tell us how you got the news?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely an honor. I got the news. I did apply for the commission when it opened up. And I was contacted by the White House Personnel Office to say, you're on a list of folks that the president is considering for this appointment. There's a process that we need to go through. And so it started a vetting process and some paperwork that needed to be completed that led up to a swearing in that happened just a couple weeks ago with Vice President Kamala Harris.
How amazing. So did you folks have your first meeting then?
We did.
Yeah.
We had our first meeting over 2 days after we were sworn in, really to hear from multiple agencies at the federal level. There's an interagency working group and a regional group that helps to take information and listen in about what the top issues are in our communities that get fed up to the administration as recommendations potentially. And so we really spent a lot of time hearing from various federal agencies about what they're working on, how we might work together. And really it was just a high level overview to give us some ideas about how we would feed into the administration with recommendations from our communities.
Yeah, so maybe could you tell me a little bit more, like how large is this commission, and are you the only one with Hawaii ties that are?
There are a number of commissioners, about 6 of us with Hawaii ties. I think that Daniel Day Kim being appointed to this commission has brought more Hollywood, if you will, visibility than normal. There are a total of 23 commissioners. As you know, Crystal Ka'ai, who is the first Native Hawaiian serving executive director at the White House Commission. So really exciting. Amy Agbayani, who also has strong ties here to the University of Hawaii, is also a fellow commissioner. So there are a total of 23 of us who were appointed by President Biden.
That is so amazing. And I'll tell you too, like how proud I felt, especially because it's a lot of Hawaiian women or women of color that that have risen to prominence sort of in terms of these issues. And so how does that feel being a part of this cohort of really powerful women?
Yeah, definitely an honor and a privilege, humbled really to represent Hawaii in such a large way. I think I agree with you, really proud. I know some of the women on the commission from prior work done in advocacy in Native Hawaiians partnering with other AAPI groups nationally. And so I have a lot of respect for a lot of my colleagues who are at the table as well. And just really honored to represent Hawaii in that way. Really look forward to what we might be able to accomplish.
Thank you. Thank you for providing this detail, and it sort of gives us this window of opportunity into really understanding how the federal system works and how advocacy at the federal level works. So, and one of the things that really stands out is that really for the first time, because it's always been Asian American and Pacific Islanders, and to now see squashed in between those two words is Native Hawaiians, really is a call out and perhaps a reference to even, the census, the data gathering, which does specify Native Hawaiians, right? So how did that happen? What does that mean to have the specificity of Native Hawaiians in this overall commission title?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a powerful statement and indicative of the equity and inclusion focus of the Biden administration. By specifically calling out Native Hawaiians within that Pacific Islander acronym speaks to the need for all communities to be seen by its government. And I think that we have a brutal history with the United States. And in many instances feel that we have not been seen by that government. And so I do think that this really brings attention. And it also speaks volumes to the advocacy that has been happening for decades around the need for disaggregated data. And that there are specific ways, and each community is so unique. And how do we bring the brilliance and the vibrancy of so many diverse communities to the table to have a voice? And so greatly appreciating the administration for calling out that Native Hawaiian acronym within this. And oftentimes, just generally, the Pacific Islander community has felt smaller than the attention around the Asian American community. And I think we really need to work together, that having Asian American community advocates advocate for our needs and vice versa is a powerful statement at the federal level.
Mm-hmm. When I was a long time ago, I worked for the United States Senate, the Committee on Indian Affairs, and a lot of the policies were really placing Native Hawaiians within the purview or context of Native Americans, and really looking at these issues of sovereignty and indigenous rights. And so what does it mean? Like, can you do these things simultaneously? Advocate at a Native American kind of approach, or and simultaneously doing this kind of Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian, right? Because they're kind of
yes, and I think that has been the identity crisis of the Native Hawaiian people, right? That at the federal level, we straddle between both. We're placed in both categories, not by choice on either, but the federal government sometimes is inclusive of Native Hawaiians. We are a Native population of the United States. We don't have parity in the exact same way that Alaska Natives or Native American communities, tribal communities have. And then we straddle so we have one foot in both worlds, mm-hmm. in the Native community agenda and also in this AAPI community. And so I think it's not either or, it's both and, mm-hmm. that we want advocacy for Native Hawaiian communities at the federal level in any way we can, so that we are truly reflective of the needs and the issues, the challenges and opportunities that exist here in Hawaii for our community.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think we have to operate kind of at full pistons and on
right.
every
level. We're firing at all levels.
So maybe can you tell us a little bit more about the commission? What is its purview? What kinds of things are you looking at, and what is your, I guess, is there a bite to the bark? Right? What is it? Recommendations that you come forth with, policy recommendations? What are the
Absolutely.
outcomes?
So the commission Definitely will make recommendations to the administration. The work that we're doing right now to learn more about what's happening at each of the federal agencies is to help us understand, are there specific recommendations for particular agencies within the federal government? Our president and this administration is very focused around the needs of disenfranchised communities, those who have been underserved, and how do we represent a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive government? And so, yes, I think that there is bite, that there are ways that we take recommendations for the administration to act upon. We have real issues here in Hawaii. Red Hill is an issue. Will we raise that? Absolutely. And so we work on a very diverse platform of issues. Personally, and that's just me, and the committees that I've been assigned to are around economic justice and health equity. And so our committees will specifically focus on those areas. There are committees around data disaggregation, around immigration. And so it runs the gamut, and really you will see that the expertise that they've leaned on across the country really have leaders who have been at the forefront of many of these issues. And so our job is to get out into community, to listen, to understand what we're hearing, and bring that back to the advisory council in an effort for us to make some concrete recommendations to the administration.
And what does that look like? Is that a series of hearings or meetings that the commission will do kind of across the country, or is it the subcommittees that are empowered to meet in various jurisdictions?
Yeah, it could look like as diverse as the commission itself looks, right? And so I think we each in our committees have an opportunity to make recommendations on how we'd like to do that outreach. Of course, we have to go through a process to get clearance. The most familiar aspects that I have about the work to this commission is through the Obama administration. At the time, I was at the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, and the Obama administration and its commission did do a hearing at an annual convening with the entire commission to hear about specific issues from the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community. I remember also them doing a listening session at the East-West Center here on campus. And so we can work with the regional group, with interagency working groups, with smaller groups of folks on the specific focus areas, but there are opportunities for us to do extensive outreach to hear from community and then make recommendations.
That's great. So we can look forward then to something,
Absolutely.
some presence coming
Absolutely.
here to Hawaii sometime in the future.
I think also about presence in Hawaii that we do have regional offices here, and I'm not sure how familiar people are, but our regional network is an excellent way for us to reach the federal government. Not everyone has that opportunity to physically be in DC and to really elevate the way to use regional offices so that our voices are heard at the federal level. And I think that's something that we can definitely elevate and make clear.
Meaning, so if someone had a concern that they could actually reach out to the local office?
Regional, right, there's a regional network and we can definitely share. I would love to work closer with the East-West Center on how we might do outreach around Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander issues. So we have a huge opportunity to elevate what our issues and opportunities and challenges are at the federal level.
You know, someone mentioned once that it's not, we're not a minority, we're actually a global majority. And when we recast the issues that affect people of color and indigenous peoples, that it really, the size of our population globally is really immense. So I think, I think sometimes we think of ourselves as minorities, right? Too often when really we're not. So maybe, I guess, when you guys had your first meeting, what did you see emerging as some of the major national issues that the commission will be confronting?
Sure. I think in a post-COVID, and I know we're not completely out of COVID, so I say that carefully, but we saw huge disparities that were exacerbated because of COVID, right? Isolation, mental health issues, the divide on income inequality across the country, the health disparities across the country. And so as we come off of the big peak of COVID and then the Omicron variant, we do see continuing divides that need to be addressed. You know, I think back when I was first engaged in the nonprofit sector, in the start of my career in the nonprofit sector, and I was boarding a bus going to Tuskegee, Alabama, to talk with the Ford Foundation about income inequality and how do we close the racial wealth gap. And here we are, almost 25 years later, and we're still talking about the racial wealth gap. And while the conversation has morphed over time and it's talked about differently, there are deep inequalities that need to be addressed and systems that need to be changed. And I think that we're working with an administration that is committed to really exploring how that could happen. How do we impact federal policy to make those changes?
And actually, it's really interesting that you bring up this point about Ford Foundation. My sense was that part of the commission's task as well is to really look at leveraging the resources that are at the corporate level, the nonprofit sector, as well as the federal government, so that we can kind of coalesce all of these resources in a way that really addresses the needs of these communities. So is that
Yeah, I think
case?
that absolutely. I think the world in general, right? We are so divided by ideology that it is so difficult today to solve problems, to arrive at collective solutions. And so whether that's in my day job at the Hawaii Community Foundation, where we're saying we want change for a better well-being of people in place through collective action across sectors. The federal government is saying the same thing. We need cross-sector collaboration, nonprofits, for-profits, corporate, philanthropy. We know that that is true, and yet we struggle to get there. We're so divided by ideology that we fail to stay at the table. And so, yes, I think that is resonating not just at the federal level, but at local levels and right in our backyard. We know the answer, but we have to stay at the table, come together, and that it is more than a bumper sticker to say that we're better together. We are, in fact, better together. And how do we truly make that happen, right? Where our country is so divided. And so I think that the task is huge. The work there's a tremendous amount of work, but really excited to dig in and to work with my colleagues across the country to make a difference.
I'm so glad you talked about healing and the need to bring the sectors together in this divided country, because definitely Asian hate has been on the rise, right? And the fractures in this country, I don't know if they're getting better. I mean, they seem to be almost growing wider at some points. But I guess I'm wondering, are you feeling hopeful under the Biden administration? This commission, the work of the commission, talk about your hope, your sources of hope.
I definitely feel hopeful. To be sworn in by a woman of color who serves today as the United States Vice President. I think there is tremendous opportunity. I think that the Biden administration's commitment to equity and inclusion speaks volumes. When I got the call from the White House, my mind immediately went back to, I was sitting in the White House when President Obama signed the executive order for this commission in his administration. And at the time, it felt surreal well, we're sitting in the White House and there's the president just a little bit away. And I was so excited. I had brought a lei and I was excusing myself across the aisle. Excuse me, really thinking I was going to be able to give this lei to the president. And of course, he couldn't take the lei and said, hey, I can't take that, but you can give it to my security officer, but I can take the kiss. And of course, that was so awesome and overwhelming that our president understood that part of who I was, right? That he knew us. He sees us as a resident and a child who grew up here in Hawaii. And I share that story because the importance of having our voice, our presence at that level is because we have so much as a place, Hawaii, our people and this place to offer to the world. Mm-hmm. And that unless we're in these spaces that they don't know, we have so much to offer. And so just having a president who understood that cultural protocol, that I can't take the lei, but I can take the kiss, to know that we were grounded in something of similarity, that matters, mm-hmm. right? That really matters. And so sharing who we are as a people at that level is powerfully important. Mm.
So I take it you're talking about President Obama.
Yes.
And so what year was the commission established?
Oh gosh, President Obama, when he was sworn into office, this was how many years ago? Mm-hmm. 12 years ago?
Yeah.
And so that was President Obama's signing of the executive order. That was my first introduction really to this commission. I was working with lots of policy advocates at the AAPI community nationally as a representative at the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. And so we participated and were invited to the signing of the executive order under the Obama administration. And then have, through my career, worked with our allies across the country in AAPI community. And so when this opportunity came up with the Biden administration, I applied and we talked briefly about that process.
Awesome. So, because you talked about your advocacy work and working for the Council of Native Hawaiian Advancement, maybe you could share with us a little bit more kind of this path or journey that you've been on, working so often with Native Hawaiian nonprofits. So how did you get started? Like, where did you grow up? What drew you to the work of community?
Sure. I grew up here on Oahu in Kaneohe. My ohana and the piko of the Kauhani ohana is in Kaneohe. And I attended Kamehameha schools, graduated from Gonzaga University, and really thought at that time that, like so many of us who graduated from Kamehameha at that time, that I was going to be in the travel industry and spent my high school years learning Japanese. And after I graduated, while that was okay for me for a little while, I moved to Hawaii Island, where my husband is from, and opened my eyes to a whole nother aspect of Hawaiian community that probably I didn't have to deal with in my own life, right? That there was a different level of poverty that was there, but there was also a strong connected community there. And when I left the Big Island after my son was born, mostly because of work, my aunt, who was working at Hawaiian Community Assets, really said, we need more Native Hawaiians who are doing mortgage and finance and lending. And I'd like you to think about coming to learn with me because we need more Hawaiians in this space. And that was really the start of it with Hawaii Community Lending. We were a nonprofit mortgage broker doing work specifically to help folks on the wait list get into their homesteads. That led to DHHL, that led to the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. And then today at the Hawaii Community Foundation. But CNHA was a huge stepping stone and a growing place for me, both as their policy chair before I became their CEO, and then just working with the huge array of nonprofits and small businesses that serve our community, and to watch the brilliance of our people and how they were able to create solutions to meet the challenges in whatever it was, whether that was health or housing or economic development, truly inspiring and really motivated me to keep going. It's been an honor, really has been.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey. And while, I think this is the first opportunity that we've really had to sit down and talk story. I have watched your career over the years, and so really grateful that you're actually now at this level on this commission, being able to speak and advocate on behalf of Native Hawaiians, but also our broader Pacific Island community, because we're all, we need to be more allied than ever before.
Part of the responsibility is broader than, while my career has definitely served in Native Hawaiian community, that this role is much broader than just Native Hawaiians. And I think that we have a responsibility as Native people to really elevate the issues of other Pacific Islanders here in Hawaii. We have a huge constituency of COFA migrants who have struggled to access healthcare and who have their own issues. And I really hope to be able to advance some of their challenges, to elevate some of the solutions that they've been working on at the grassroots level to really elevate and help advance those issues as well.
That's a great plug. I hope people really take that to heart. And I think, in reflection, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, we always talk about being able to navigate. But it's not just about navigating on land, it's about navigating on the sea. It's about being able to navigate issues, navigate structural inequities, navigating the political system. And I think that there's an inherent ability that we all have to do this, because it's in our koko, our DNA.
I love that analogy, right? That yes, we are brilliant navigators, not just of the ocean. I love that we can navigate this very complex and sometimes feels so out of reach system, right? We feel very disconnected, and there's a lot of historical trauma. But we are a resilient people. We are still here, and we have so much to offer the world. And so I love that analogy that we can navigate this process. We should navigate this process, and we should share that brilliance with the world to be able to make a better place for our people here in Hawaii.
Well said. I think it's a perfect way to end this conversation. The profound ability of aloha to heal the world. So thank you very much to the Better Tomorrow Speaker Series, to Michelle Kahanu for taking the time to spend with us today. And I want to thank the students of the College of Social Sciences here in the Digital Studios. It's been fabulous to be in this new space. It's the first time I've been in here. Encourage you all to experience it. Come on down. So with that, I'm signing off. I am Noelle Kahanu with the American Studies Department here at UH Manoa.